Alright, so today we are talking about the Tib Bar Guy Nordic Back Extension version 2. And we're going to compare this full-sized Nordic curl machine to the Nordbench from Nordstick that I talked about in a previous video to help you make a simpler buying decision, because if you are looking for something for your home gym, you're probably looking at one of these two benches because they're both under $1,000, but there are some key differences that'll help you make your buying decision. So we're going to talk about those differences and how you can make your decision in this video. Let's get into it. And in the interest of full disclosure, I want to be clear that the Tib Bar Guy company did send me this Tib Bar Guy Nordic Back Extension machine for free to review and compare to the Nordstick Nordbench, because I already did a video a while back about the Nordstick Nordbench versus the Tib Bar Guy's adjustable weight bench. And the Tib Bar Guy's adjustable weight bench did not do that well. And in that video, I also mentioned that I was reluctant to try the Tib Bar Guy bench because of how flimsy and wobbly the adjustable weight bench was. So they sent me this one for free, and now I get to review it. So neither company has any editorial influence. They don't pay me for my videos. I take my own time and spend my own money to make these videos. So if you do find this video helpful, make sure to hit the like button, subscribe, and use my affiliate links in the description box for these two benches, because I do think both of these benches are pretty solid choices for your home gym, but there are key differences that you need to know. The first and biggest difference, of course, is the cost, because the Tib Bar Guy Nordic Back Extension V2 is definitely more expensive, but it's also a bigger bench. When I looked up this bench this morning, it's $599 plus $100 shipping to California, which gives us about $700 plus tax on top of it. When I look at the Nordstick Nordbench, it's $399 plus $40 shipping. And if I want to make it a pretty fair comparison, I'd have to add a $20 stabilizer accessory, which would then make it $420 plus tax. So a significant price difference, unless you can get the Tib Bar Guy bench on sale or on some kind of promotion. So obviously the Nordstick Nordbench wins on price, but where does the Tib Bar Guy bench win? Let's talk about that right now. I've got the Nordstick Nordbench here in front of the Tib Bar Guy full-size Nordic Back Extension machine, and you can see that there's an obvious size difference. There's a whole lot more real estate on the Tib Bar Guy bench. You can see it's got a much longer footprint as well. This is about a foot longer, maybe actually a little bit more than a foot, and it means this bench is a lot more stable and sturdy. It also comes with a loading pin for adding weight plates to make the bench even more stable when you're doing Nordic curls flat down. If you are a bigger, heavier, taller person, that can be a real plus. If you want that same functionality with the Nordstick Nordbench, it will cost you just another $20 for an added accessory. You're gonna have to forgive how bad this looks, but I just did my hamstrings 2 days ago and they're still super sore. So anyway, when you're in the descent phase of your Nordic curl, oh God, it is really nice to have something to rest down on like this. That helps you feel more stable on the landing, and it gives you a stable base to take off from. Oh God. And it gives you a stable base to take off from. I'm only 5'7", 145 pounds, so the extra landing area is a nice to have, but it's not a need to have for me. I don't normally feel any sort of instability with the Nordstick Nordbench, but if you were, say, 6 foot or 6'5" or 6'6", and you weighed over 200 pounds, I could see how having this extra real estate would be more of a necessity than just a nice to have. Let's do a quick comparison of the stability. First is the Tib Bar Guy's NBEv2. This is at the bottom position. When I try to rock side to side, you can see that these little handles act as stabilizers, so this bench is super duper stable at the bottom position. In contrast, on the Nordstick Nordbench, on the bottom level, there is a lot of play from side to side, so it is not anywhere near as stable as the Tib Bar Guy's NBEv2. The Tib Bar Guy Nordic Back Extension bench is definitely more stable than the Nordstick Nordbench, but keep in mind that these are both home gym pieces of equipment. Neither one of them is going to feel as heavy duty and as super solid and stable as what you might find in a commercial gym. If you're looking for that level of stability, you're going to have to get a very expensive Nordic curl bench. I think the Tib Bar Guy bench also has one other functional advantage, which is that this leg roller actually functions as a really nice pad. You pull this little piece out and then you slot it right back in there, and then you throw your leg roller on top, and then when you're doing something like hip thrusts or Bulgarian split squats or reverse hypers, this pad works a whole lot better. Using the leg roller feels a little more stable and just a little bit better than what you get with the Nordstick Nordbench. With this, you can easily set up into your hip thrusts, and it feels good because the pad is a nice rounded pad that you can move around with your spine. It also feels really good for your Bulgarians like this, because again, the shape of this leg roller is the right shape for being able to get that rotation. You can absolutely do Bulgarians with the Nordstick Nordbench, and you can also do your hip thrusts, but the feeling isn't quite as solid and stable. And I also find that I need to have the Nordstick Nordbench up against something stable because it's pretty easy to slide if it's not on a sticky enough surface. But that doesn't mean I think that the Nordstick Nordbench is inferior or a worse choice than the Tib Bar Guy bench, for reasons I'm going to explain in a second. But before we talk about that, let's look again at the Tib Bar Guy bench. You'll notice that these handles actually act as more grip and support, so it keeps the whole bench super stable when it's down at its lowest position. It's harder to push around because the whole unit is actually heavier. So if I want to do my hip thrust, can I get it to slide? Well, I probably can, but it's much, much harder to get that sliding to happen. I actually deliberately have to press back, where with the Nordstick Nordbench, if it's not on the right surface, it's definitely gonna slide sideways unless you have it blocked against something. And for those who wanna do reverse hypers, you can in fact do them. That leg roller pad does make it a little bit more comfortable, I think, than what you get with the Nordstick Nordbench, but it's still not that comfortable in exercise, and you might need to pad it up a little bit more. I'm not even a very heavy guy, but that is a lot of pressure across my hips there. And one final plus for the Tib Bar Guy bench is that these rollers can adjust to be nice and tight and snug, which keeps you feeling real secure when you're working on your Nordic curls. Now let's talk about some of the things the Nordstick Nordbench actually does a little bit better than the Tib Bar Guy's Nordic back extension. The most obvious advantage you will encounter with the Nordstick Nordbench is the assembly. It is so easy. It takes about 10 minutes and you only have to screw in a couple things. They ship it to you almost totally assembled. That is such a relief, because when you compare it to the Tib Bar Guy bench, even though they have a pretty good manual like I have here, and they even send you some tools to help you do it, it's gonna take you at least an hour to assemble. And the nuts and bolts that they ship it with are the greasiest, oiliest hardware I've ever messed with when building any kind of gym equipment. My hands were getting black and greasy and oily, and I had to scrub them down constantly so I wouldn't get oil all over the pads and other areas.
So just to get an idea of how oily the hardware is, you see, here were all the washers, the screws, everything, and you can see the white cardboard backing that everything was sitting on is soaked with oil that was on all of the hardware. And so that was just constantly getting on my hands. So I didn't really want to mess with the camera while I was assembling this. Or if I had to touch the camera, I went and washed my hands beforehand because it was so greasy.
And also, I highly recommend you get a socket wrench set if you don't already have one, because if you try to assemble the Tib Bar Guy bench using these things, it's probably going to take you more than an hour. It'll probably be around 2. The Nordstick Nordbench also has softer, cushier pads, and that may or may not be an advantage depending on your perspective. For me, weighing only 145 pounds, which maybe you haven't weighed that since you were 12 years old, I like having the softer pads. The pads on the Tib Bar Guy bench are definitely firmer, and if you weigh over 200 pounds, you might want that because maybe you sink too far into a softer pad. That said, the softer pad is pretty cushy and deep, so I'd be surprised if you managed to get so deep into this that it actually hurts your knees in some way. But for heavier people, I would say the firmer padding that you get on the Tib Bar Guy bench is probably preferable. The other place that the Nordstick Nordbench wins is definitely on space saving. So this thing, like we talked about earlier, is about 1.5 feet shorter when you measure out the length. So its actual footprint is much smaller, and it folds down smaller because you can actually drop this guy in. Oof. Then you can pull this pin out here and then shorten this up, and now the whole thing can just fold up into this tiny little bench. But with the Tib Bar Guy bench, there's no shortening this up. There's just one big bench. So the best you can do is just drop this down, and then you lift the whole thing up. So now this whole thing is what, 5 foot, I don't know, 2, 5 foot 3. So while this doesn't take up that much space front to back, it's still a bigger, bulkier thing, and it just takes up more space in your home gym. So if you are short on space, then the Tib Bar Guy bench is probably not the best choice because it is so big. But let's be honest, how often are you really going to be folding these things up and putting them away? I know I don't, but if you're a very neat person, it might matter to you, but I just leave mine out. One other thing I like about the Nordstick Nordbench more than the Tib Bar Guy is that this foot plate has nice grip tape that makes your foot feel locked in when you're doing your Nordic curls. The reason they have that is because you can use this as a slant board, but like I mentioned in my previous video, I don't particularly like the slant board function. It's like having half of a slant board. It does its job kind of, but you can't really do really deep squats with this slant board, so I don't ever use the slant board function. But the grip tape does help my feet feel really firm, stable, and secure on the foot plate, so I do like that. Contrast that with the Tib Bar Guy's foot plate. It's just a slippery metal. There's absolutely no grip. Your feet can just slip and slide in there. The good news is, like I mentioned before, these rollers lock you in really securely, so I don't feel like it's too big an issue, but it would be nice if this actually provided some grip so you felt like you were really locked in. One final way I think the Nordstick Nordbench is a more convenient bench is in its ability to shift between Nordic curls and back extensions quickly. For the Tib Bar Guy full-size Nordic bench, you actually have to remove this pad and then shorten up the whole bench in order to get into your back extensions. So that is a fiddly process requiring you to loosen this, pull it, and then you take that out, and there's this little mechanism here that slots in. Then you put that aside, so now you've got another thing just sitting around, and then you've got to shorten up everything here without slamming your fingers too badly. And bring that down. That slamming of fingers problem, by the way, is not unique. It's actually a potential problem if you're not careful with the Nordstick Nordbench. On the Tib Bar Guy bench, it's not too bad, but I always get a little sketched out when I'm closing these benches in and sliding things around. All right, so I think I got the height now. Yeah, I think I've got it. All right, so now I can do my back extensions. And if you look carefully and think creatively, you realize that if you wanted to, you could just leave the Tib Bar Guy bench like this, and it would give you a nice stable base to do your back extensions. And also, you could do your Nordic curls by just dropping this down and just leaving it pretty much at the same level. You might want to lengthen it a little bit, and then you've got yourself something very similar to the Nordstick Nordbench. Oh God, my hamstrings. Yep. Oh God, they're so sore. Oh yeah. And then you wouldn't even have to change anything. You wouldn't have to put that pad back in, but you would no longer have that full bench that you can lie flat down on with your chest. And just to make this super clear, I want to show you that it is basically the exact same setup on the Nordstick Nordbench. So I'm right here. I can do my back extensions nice and easy. And if I want to do my Nordic curls, I'm just going to drop this down to 35 because, oh my God, the things I'm doing here. So you're just going into it, and then boom, you've got Nordic curls. And if you want to go deeper, you just drop on deeper on a day when you are not screaming in pain. Oh God, 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 oh God. I will also mention that adjusting the height on the Nordstick Nordbench Can be in some ways a lot faster because you can just use your foot here and adjust so it can drop into the right pin, where on the Tib Bar Guy bench, you got to pull this pin and move the whole bench. Ultimately, I think the Tib Bar Guy bench is more stable. It just feels more secure, but for speed and convenience, I like the Nordstick Nordbench. And before we get to the final summary, I also want to point out that putting this center pad back in for the Tib Bar Guy bench can be kind of annoying. So you got to get in here, up in here, and then pull this pad out. Like I said, I always get nervous messing around with these slidey things because I'm always afraid something's gonna pinch on a finger or jam me or whatever. You take this right here, again, you gotta pull this out, and then you gotta find that hole it goes into and make sure it slots down right in there, and then screw it in place, and then you're back to your full-size bench. It's not that big a deal, it just takes a few seconds, but it's just one more thing to mess around with. I'm not sure how much I would really want to have to do that. At my height and weight, it's not that big a deal to just use the shortened version. But again, if you're a taller person, you might really like having this. And I just want to make this one point super clear. Both of these benches are rated for a max capacity of 500 pounds. So whether you get the Nordstick Nordbench or you get the Tib Bar Guy bench, you get the same max weight capacity. And if you weigh 400 or 500 pounds, then no more discussion is necessary. I will not fight. I will give you my lunch money, but you got to catch me first. I almost forgot to mention that the Nordstick Nordbench has an optional accessory, which is a landmine attachment, which you just slide under. And then you've got yourself a nice little landmine setup where you can use your barbell with some support around this fulcrum. And I really like having that option for my training because it just adds a little bit of spice to my life. I don't think the landmine attachment should be a deal breaker by any means. It's just a nice little inexpensive attachment that you can use to turn your Nordstick Nordbench into the centerpiece of like a pretty nice functional home gym. Especially if you like the idea of having assistance while doing squats or deadlifts, this is a great alternative to having to buy a huge purpose-built machine or getting a whole squat rack setup. And nobody is saying you can't also get a squat rack. Another place where the Nordstick Nordbench wins is with these stabilizing rubber feet on the bottom of the frame. So right now we are looking at the Tib Bar Guy's NBEv2, and when you're moving it around, if you happen to move it a little bit sideways and get the foot stuck, you might notice that the foot just falls right off and slides off super easy. And that's kind of annoying. You could probably fix that by dropping some super glue or even just tape in there to keep it on, but it is a kind of weird weakness to have, and it's not like you can't fix that because, as you'll see on the Nordstick Nordbench, there is a pretty simple fix. This is on the Nordstick Nordbench, and you can see they've just bolted or riveted this thing in place, so you can't pull that off. I think in earlier iterations of this, it could be easily pulled off, and they realized that was a problem, so boom, problem now fixed. So to summarize some key points to help you make a decision on a Nordic curl bench for your home gym. First, the Tib Bar Guy bench. It's bigger, it's heavier, it's sturdier, and it's a little bit more expensive. So if you have the budget and you're a bigger person and you want more landing space when you do your Nordic curls and you don't mind it taking up a bunch of space in your home gym, then this is a good option, as long as you also don't mind spending an hour or two assembling it. That's just a one-time thing, so it's not like you have to do that every time. So if you want the sturdier bench, it might be worth it for you. If you're a smaller person like me, if you've got a smaller home gym space, if you've got a smaller budget, the Nordstick Nordbench absolutely gets it done, and it is smaller and lighter. It takes up less space, the shipping cost is less, and the overall cost is significantly less than the Tib Bar Guy bench. And also the assembly on the Nordstick Nordbench is so much easier. It's like unbelievably easier. If you don't believe me, I made a video about the assembly process for this bench that I'll link to in the description box, and you can check that out. It's pretty crazy how easy it was to put this together. Honestly, I'm having a hard time deciding which one of these Nordic curl benches I'm going to keep in my home gym. I really like the stability, I like the hip thrusts and the Bulgarian split squat feel on the Tib Bar Guy bench, and I just like how it feels a bit sturdier, but it does take up more space, and I was doing just fine with the Nordbench from Nordstick before, so maybe I'll just keep that. I don't really know. Let me know what you think. Drop me a comment down below. One of these days, I will get it all the way down. So now that I've laid that all out there for you, let me know which Nordic curl bench seems like the best fit for you. Drop me a comment down below. And if there's some other piece of equipment you'd like me to check out, drop that in the comments section as well. If you found this video helpful and you want to get one of these benches, please consider using one of my affiliate links down below. It helps me make more videos like this to help you make good buying decisions and just good decisions overall for your body. Thanks for watching. Remember to hit the like button, subscribe, and as always, I hope you remember that pain sucks, life shouldn't.